camera on. It's 6 o'clock and we have a quorum. Let's go ahead and begin. First up, the minutes. Does anybody have corrections to the minutes? Daphne, on page 5, the end of the second paragraph. Um,
Down here.
I the where it says 200 riders a year could fund the route.
Uh-huh.
Could we change that to would justify the cost or would
Oh,
justify the route?
yeah.
Because I didn't mean to kind of insinuate that they would fund it directly, just that
Right.
the presence of their ridership would justify the costs.
Okay.
And that's the only change I have. All right. Uh, Hearing no other corrections to the minutes, they stand as corrected. Um, let's move on to item number 1, which is a Beltline study.
Mhm. Yes. So this um was also kind of a surprise to me. I think I sat in a webinar literally like right before the holidays about it as well. And so essentially it's not going, the Wisconsin Department of Transportation isn't going to for certain expand the Beltline, but this is like the study that they've been doing for, I don't know, the past 10, 15 years. And so this study, is kind of their first step into, making any of these future additions. And so the portion that's in Middleton, I don't think is necessarily to actually expand the physical size of the Beltline, but it would, possibly start that flex lane that's in the Beltline and, start it further up in Middleton, something like that. Um, and so that could be a possibility. And then I think there might be also some other possibilities of just like interchange improvements or I think they were thinking of adding like a park and ride, a different park and ride somewhere in Middleton. So those were some of the things that were in this study that, could possibly happen in the future. And so there is a public comment period that is ending next week. And so Alder Haniro sent this over to us to look at to see if the Ped Bike Transit wanted to provide any, formal statement. And so she also included the Fitchburg resolution that they had passed that was kind of opposing the capacity expansion. And so, you can read over that, but essentially it would be, even if it isn't physically expanding, but, adding that flex lane, it does, increase the number of cars and can impact everyone else who is getting on or, crossing any of those interchanges. And then also can affect, the air quality and all of that. So um, we could, write up something similar to this. It wouldn't be a resolution because we don't have enough time to get it passed by council before that public input deadline, but we could write up something similar to this to submit as public comment. So yeah, basically just here to listen to what you guys have to say and any comments you might want us to push forward.
Yeah. Kirsten.
Yeah, I had actually made comments when this first came out, and I cannot believe I didn't even think about bringing it to the committee. But I really like how Fitchburg has worded it, and would like I would love for our committee to make a comment since we can't do a resolution, stating that we stand behind Fitchburg's view, or we could even say it as our own. So I really like how they have worded it, and really feel that we need to be pushing again to overturn um, what Scott Walker had prevented us from having a train running from the east side to west side. Start working more towards that versus adding lanes, because every study shows that when you add a lane, by the time that lane is added, the congestion is already um, overriding it.
I did add a comment. I sent in a comment as well, but I agree with Kirsten that we should have a kind of committee comment, very similar uh, to the Fitchburg resolution. Yeah, the I really want to start emphasizing that additional lanes are an infinitely long intersection, and intersections are the primary area of unavoidable congestion. So if you make an infinitely long intersection, you don't decrease the congestion. I did in my personal comment point out that in their own materials, the areas of highest collision rate and congestion were in the areas that had the most lanes before they added the flex lane. Like that, the addition of lanes creates the problem. You increase the likelihood of collisions. You do not decrease it. Um, so yes, let's do our thing. And um, I because I'm me, I especially want to emphasize these nerdy technical aspects because they are important. Um, that these technical details that get overlooked, that the people who should know the technical details do not push back enough against the decision makers who do not know these aspects and who rely on their own intuitions instead. We need to be emphasizing these like basic facts of transportation network design. I
So,
mean, Steve, yeah, go.
yeah, so Tad, you've written something. I mean, is that something we can also incorporate then, along with the Fitchburg statement? I mean, some kind of integration, would that work? I mean, is that, and what I'm asking is, do we have to
Yeah,
start? Can we build on what you've written and what Fitchburg has written?
I suspect that for hmm,
Tad, can we adopt what Fitchburg has written as a committee, because it won't be a resolution, and then have a paragraph written by you explaining that most of the collisions had occurred in
yeah,
areas.
I can write that up.
And if you could
And I
have it
will let
worded very similarly to what you just presented to us, we can vote it through, or say yay or nay on having that presented.
how Daphne, how does that actually work?
Yeah, I don't know if we would be able to vote on it before, next week's is the deadline. So we would have to, do a separate meeting if we wanted to approve Tad's language specifically. Um, so I think one way would just be that, Tad could draft that extra paragraph, and then we would send it out to everyone. But I'm not sure if we could do like a vote on that because that would be considered like a walking meeting or
Closed door
it would,
meeting.
right, yeah.
Yeah.
Should we just vote on adopting Fitchburg's language as a committee, and propose that, have that sent?
Yeah, I mean, if you guys all agree to adding, have Tad drafting some language about, where the flex lanes were added is where, most of the collisions were. Something along those
Well,
lines. Yeah, or however Tad
I
is able
I mean
to
I
word
mean
it.
if 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 staff is willing to uh, help me walk through this. So we would not be adopting Fitchburg's wording exactly because it's a resolution. So it
Hmm.
would need to be rewritten as a comment, presumably
Hmm.
by you or Scott.
Hmm.
Um, so so if we are requesting and staff is amenable to that, could we simply add as part of that request include a brief comment about the the congruency of collisions, congestion, and number of lanes? We can just add that into the motion for the request for you guys to do that. Is
Yeah.
that's what we're
I
going for, right?
yeah,
Okay,
I think that would
cool.
make the most sense. Yep.
Okay. Do we have any other thoughts on that? Any other maybe like
Well, so
one,
definitely that could be delivered
yeah.
by the 15th then.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I'll probably take some time either tomorrow or early next week to basically just turn this into like a paragraph statement. So, deleting the whereas and then just I won't be changing, adding too much of my own information. And then at the very end, also including that language about, lanes and congestion and collision, that Tad was explaining earlier.
Right. Okay, so with that in mind, I'm going to move that we ask staff very politely, because we can't force them to do anything. Ask staff very politely to modify modify the Fitchburg resolution into a comment from our committee, and with the addition of a note concerning how the largest number of lanes on the belt line were correlated with the highest amount of congestion and the highest number of collisions.
And this is Kirsten. I second that.
All right, we've got our motion and our second. Those in favor?
I
Hi.
That's
I,
everybody. The motion passes. Cool. All right. Um, Item number 2, discussion and possible action on the 2025 Complete Streets Annual Report.
Yeah, so Mark did a progress report probably in like April or May of 2025 for 2024. And so I'm just trying to get us back onto the annual schedule of, after the completion of 2025, we'll have the Complete Streets progress report. I've kind of changed the layout just so we can kind of better track over the years from 2024, 25, and then in the future 2026, some of these performance measures and all of that. So this is what I've gathered so far. um, at the very end, I believe there is just some kind of overall takeaways. And I think the one of the main things that I saw was when we were looking at performance measure 8, which was Yes, the amount of pavement or impervious surface replaced with green space. It was really tough for us as staff to kind of determine that just because it's kind of like a project by project basis and typically, anytime there's a new project, it is typically increasing impervious surface. I think in the last progress report, Mark noted that we did overall decrease some impervious surface by creating a park called, the Lake Street Park, um, which has like a kayak launch and all of that. But then we also added, sidewalks and all these other things to access the kayak launch. So it was just really difficult for us to overall provide some kind of, meaningful number for that. So, I think going in the future, there could, performance measure 8 could be replaced with something else that you guys think could be more meaningful, just because it's just really tough to track something like this. So that was one of the main things that I took away. Um, Another thing is policy for RFBs, race crosswalks. So that's something that we are in the middle of talking about. And then something else is that at least our Parks Department is looking to get more like cell phone data of how people are using their parks. And then in relation to that, we would be also be able to get data for how people are using trails and all of that. And so that would be a great and a way better way to track how people are using our trail networks and bikes and all of that, or our bike lanes and all of those things. So and hopefully we'll be getting some kind of data this year, so that next year we'll be able to have some of that information. But that's still something that's in the works with the Parks Department.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I mean, Daphne, this is such a great plan, and I love digging into the metrics. Before we go further and offer feedback, and I don't know if you have
Mhm.
specific questions for us, but can you say a little bit more about the purpose of the plan? Like, who is accountable for the plan? Who's responsible for implementing it? I'd love some of that framing background.
Yeah, so this was all part of our, the Complete Streets policy, which I think we passed back in 2023. And so that policy included all of these different performance measures and all these metrics that we would be tracking. And then hopefully, the goal is that, we would be improving in our Complete Streets policy over the years and then see better, ways that we could be improving our complete streets and all of that. And so, I mean, one of the big things this from 2024 to 2025 was, when we came up with that complete streets during construction policy at that joint meeting, just because, we were seeing like, yeah, we are adding a lot more trails, but now they're being blocked and, all of these things. So that is something that, yeah. So basically, this whole progress report is just a way to keep track of our complete streets policy. And it is part of the policy is that we would do something like this each year just to make sure that we're hitting our metrics.
Here's
Yeah, Daphne, great job. I love having this layout to be able to see from year to year. One thing that stood out to me is the new shared um, path use or on the new shared path on Parmenter. So I think it was under 3, yeah, yep,
Mhm.
multimodal paths. So on Parmenter heading north, that new section that was added, I'm not sure if we can put that under complete streets because it's not maintained year round. Um,
Mm.
for
Okay.
this year, it was not plowed, and it's in question if it will ever be plowed year round, which I think has to be an agenda item for us um,
Mhm.
next month. But I don't feel that that can be under the complete streets if it's not taken care of year round.
Okay.
Yeah.
One more kind of big picture question, Daphne. Did you guys consider creating goals for some of these metrics? Because I found myself finding the 2024 context helpful, but then also thinking about wondering what the target should be. But I
Mhm.
imagine that was an internal discussion you all had.
Yeah, I don't think we actually discussed specific goals or anything like that. I guess overall, like if we're looking at, the planning department as a whole, our goals would kind of be put into that active transportation plan that we're working on. And so um that's probably, the main thing that we would try and, relate to this. And then in addition to that, some of these metrics like the new shared use paths, we've already kind of completed a lot of like most of the ones that are within the city. And so we're looking to in our current, when we were doing like the bike network and the pedestrian network, we're looking at kind of improving our intersections and doing stuff like that and not necessarily, putting in a bunch of new paths. So, yeah, so the fact that, if we remove the Parmenter one and we see, oh, like, overall the total, we didn't have as many new shared use paths, that's not necessarily a bad thing either. It's because, we have to work on maintaining the paths that we do put in as mentioned with the Parmenter one, we put in this new path, but we can't even maintain it. So that's also a discussion too. So yeah, I don't know if we would have certain goals that we're trying to hit, at least, looking at this metric specifically. Something.
I meant for all the metrics, but that's, I
Yeah.
mean, even the point
Mhm.
that you're making is a good one for why, if maybe the goal isn't to like grow over year, but in a particular year, right, you want to actually focus on one versus the other. That could just be a way to tie this to the active transportation plan and to provide some context and be a little bit strategic about what you're hoping to accomplish by the end of the year.
Yeah, that's a good point.
I I do like keeping goals and metrics separate. The cynical programmer in me often thinks of Goodhart's law. A metric that becomes a goal ceases to be a useful metric. So I like having these separate things that tell us what's going on, and it's up to us at any given time to determine whether we think that's good or not. And I think that's still useful. In that regard, I do think number 8 as a measure kind of really only works if we have an explicit goal, an explicit long-term program about removing pavement and turning it into parkland. And as long as we don't have that, that specific goal does seem that specific metric does seem a little bit, it's there, but it doesn't really tell us anything about things we're doing, um, as opposed to an inventory of uh, intersections and that kind of thing. So I don't have an alternative for 8, so I have no problem with just kind of removing it and not replacing it. Um, Steve.
Yeah, I guess I may not win on this, but I actually going to agree with Thea and disagree with you in that it seems to me we have measures because we're trying to, again, I don't recall the report. Okay, it was done before my time, but these are measures, right, to assess movement towards something. So as a reader, I mean, not just for this committee, but right, who for any audience, it would be just helpful to know, okay, I mean, you can almost infer what they are from the performance measures, right? Whether we're trying to increase or continue to rehabilitate sidewalks, or we're trying to add more bike paths. I mean, it's like I say, you can infer it for most of them, not for all of them. And that would help even for perhaps eliminating the one that we're struggling with. And it might help us think about what other thing we might replace it with based on what it is we're trying to either improve or, let's say in the case of accidents, reduce. I don't know. It just seems to me that it's implicit in this that we're having measures because we're trying to assess something that we have, uh, you know, go back to Thea, a goal or something that we're trying to move towards or away from. So I think as a reader, it would be helpful to me. But if they're not out there, I mean, like I said, they're almost explicit, but I mean, I don't want to add them if they don't formally exist. But it seems to me we're trying to assess something here for a reason, and they should correspond to some purpose that we have, right? So that's my 2 cents or 3 cents.
Kirsten?
I agree with Steve in saying that we need to have this, I guess, well, what we're working on out there, but that it could be on a work plan versus the complete streets report, of what we're working towards. So it could be in a different section. One other thing that I thought about the complete streets report is that we did not show the path that we lost by Middleton Shores. So are we going to show a negative number because we gave that path up? I feel if we're going to actually do a report, we do need to show a negative or a loss, and not a zero.
Yeah, I think so with your two edits, Kirsten, I'll make those edits and then, so the goal of this is you guys would review it and then recommend it to Plan Commission and then Common Council to also, take a look at the progress report. So, if you want to make those two corrections before it gets passed on to Plan Commission and Common Council, we can do that. And then yeah, I like your idea, Kirsten, of linking this together with the work plan, which is also on the agenda tonight. So, yeah, I think, in the future we could take a look at these two more side by side to see, what do we have to work on this next year, based on the metrics. I think that's a great idea.
Yeah, keeping the complete streets report, all numbers and facts, and then talking with the work plan of what are we working towards.
Yes, I like that. Thea.
Yeah, I like that a lot too. A couple of things that struck me as potentially missing, and you all can tell me if they belong on this plan or not. But the implementation of the RRFBs, right, the rapid flashing beacons, feels like big wins, and I was surprised not to see that reflected. I thought that could have belonged nicely under performance measure 1, right? Improvements. And then the signage, right, that I know you all worked so hard to get installed. I finally saw that one by Goodwill, the path one, and I really liked it. So that could be reflected somewhere as a win on this plan as well. And then, as a researcher who works a lot with qualitative data, I know it can be more, qualitative and quantitative survey data, I know it can be more expensive to collect. It may not be a part of this, but as we think about other metrics to eventually include, I wonder if there's some metric that just reflects like people's feelings, right, about the safety of their community. It may be too subjective for this plan, but it could be also a nice complement to some of the hard and fast numbers we have here.
Brad?
Uh, for the parks, for getting usage data, in addition to the cell phone stuff, have you looked at heat maps from like Strava and
Oh.
other places that, I mean, lots of people using Strava would also
Yeah.
be on our trails, so that could be another metric to grab.
Yeah, that's a great idea, Brad.
Kirsten?
Yeah, regarding Thea's comment about feelings, we did do a survey monkey about safety. I think, what was that, 2 years ago?
I think it would have been 2 years by now, yeah.
Yeah, and we could do another one. And it was, I think, fairly linked to infrastructure. And do you feel safe on sidewalks or biking? And yeah, we could do another one and see the results, compare them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I performance measuring 9, I was really intrigued by. I thought it was interesting that we considered social media posts to be efforts to enhance inclusion until I thought, oh, but if we're targeting young people, right, that could be a good way to reach them. And so, again, I don't know if we're trying to change the measures themselves, but adding just a little bit more specificity to like who we're trying to engage here could be helpful. Because I did see somewhere else, maybe on this plan or elsewhere, that target populations included younger folks, older folks, those with disabilities. And so again, specifying who we're trying to engage and then mapping the strategies on may just help with context and readability.
Yeah, and I don't know if it's necessarily young people because I believe the only social media the city has is Facebook. So typically that might be on the older side nowadays for social media.
Yeah, I guess I think of that. My mind immediately went to like the public information meetings, right? And I was like, oh yeah,
Mhm.
that made all sense. And then social media struck me as different, but it is an engagement strategy.
Mhm. Mhm.
That also that also probably explains the much higher engagement on pedestrian posts versus transit posts, despite the fact that they have almost the same amount of posts. Kirsten.
Yeah, I don't want to meld agenda items, but it will go into the work plan. I agree with Thea. And I think that we actually need to be doing some like PSA things with the police department or public works. Um, and we'll get into that in the work plan stuff on Instagram and oh my gosh, possibly TikTok. But having the city do more social media posts on this stuff to inform people, to reach our entire community, not just those who read newsletters or look at the website.
So Daphne, feedback wise, would you be taking our feedback and then presenting it back to us at the next meeting, or would it be you taking our feedback and going directly to the next group?
Yeah, so um I I think our timeline would be just to go directly to Plan Commission and Common Council as the next ones.
All right.
So I can already, remove the Parmenter shared use path and then also adding that negative Middleton Shores path into this plan. And so that will just be in there, and for the next group. But yeah, I mean, I can also share, the sentiments of that we had just shared about, social media and including the RRFBs. That's actually something I could probably look into and see which RRFBs we've included this or in 2025. And so I can include that in performance measure 1 if that's um, kind of the sentiment of the committee.
I think that's a good idea.
Okay.
They are a crosswalk improvement.
Yeah.
And Daphne, would you say why I wanted the Parmenter to be removed? The
Yeah.
Great,
I'll add some justification in there.
awesome.
Daphne, one other super small thing on performance measure 5,
Mm-hmm.
crashes with pedestrians, 2025, it's listed as 7, crashes with bicyclists,
Mm-hmm.
it's at 2 for a total of 9, but then beneath you list a total of 8 crashes were flagged as involving at least a pedestrian and bicyclist, and 8 are listed. So I didn't know if we were missing one or if we were double
Mm.
counting previously, but that's just a small data issue to check.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'll take a look at that because that's all from like the crash maps data. So I'll review that to see that what happened with that one. Yeah,
And just to remind everybody that those are ones that are reported
right.
to the police station, not ones that occurred.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the 2 with the crashes with bicycle, I were really next to it. I have to imagine that's higher, but that's it's good. It would be good if it was that low.
All right. Do we have any more uh, tweaks we want to make before we pass this on to Planning Commission slash City Council?
Yeah, so to review, I'll add RRFBs to performance measure 1. I'll remove the Parmenter shared use path in, I think that's 3. And then I'll also remove the Middleton Shores path, and that will also be in 3 as well. So those are the 3 main changes I'll be making to this, and then I'll review that crash data as well, Thea. And so all of that will be packaged if you vote to recommend it over to Plan Commission and Council.
All right. So I will go ahead and make a motion to recommend the thingy, recommend the report with changes and feedback to the Plan Commission and City Council.
Second,
Steve, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
I
Aye.
All right. Motion passes. Uh, Item 3, RRFB locations.
Okay, so I'd sent you guys that video that Kirsten had sent me, and that was on University Avenue. So just talking about, design of RFBs, I think that location probably should just be a stoplight at, that point for a pedestrian instead. So, this kind of goes back to what we were talking about before with, the policies for RFBs, where should we have RFBs versus, some other kind of implementation or intervention. So, these are things that I think we're going to be including into a policy that will be in the active transportation plan, but happy to hear more comments like what Kirsten was saying with, all those lanes and crossing that kind of traffic. And then something else that was brought up was along with that Parmenter shared use path, since it's not being plowed, I think Alder Haniro had suggested putting in an RRFB up at Graber and Parmenter Street, just because, people are just going to be crossing to the other side of the street then since it's not being maintained. And so, until we get, the rest of that path created or, better sidewalks even on Graber Road, an RRFB or something could be a potential location at that place. So just wanted to hear, if you guys had any other thoughts about, the video that Kirsten had taken, and then the thoughts on adding that RFB to this map. Which, by the way, I updated with your comments from last meeting. And so there's these more like, I guess, pastel-ish colors of where we had talked about having proposed improvements. So like crosswalk by Middleton Ridge Park, um, a crosswalk and an RRFB down by Woodgate and Gammon/Park. And then we had an RFB location here, and then we can add one also here if the committee thinks that's a good place for one. And then as staff at our traffic safety meetings, we had discussed a raised intersection at Park and Donna just because of, the number of students crossing there and all of that. So those are kind of the main additions. And then this circle is it was part of that leading pedestrian interval study that you guys had looked at previously. I believe might even be 2 years back by now. And so those were kind of the priority locations that the committee had noted at that meeting when you had reviewed the study.
All right, Kirsten.
Okay, just to go back to the last meeting, the Woodgate one, and a couple of us had really pushed for that because the pond is there. So I rode that and I walked it afterwards. And I had not realized that there was an RFB on Fortune, which is one block, I guess, south. Would it be
Yeah.
essentially south? So there
Okay.
is an RFB at Fortune, and being only a block away, it's such a hard situation because Fortune goes to Sweeney and a lot of apartments that lead to the elementary school. So it's a much more important crossing for elementary students. But the one at Woodgate leads to the pond. I would love other people's ideas and feedback on having two RRFBs within a couple of blocks from one another for different purposes. One would be more recreation, one would be more school crossing. Yeah, so that was a big thing that I wanted to bring up with the RRFBs. And then regarding the raised crosswalk, would it be a true raised crosswalk? Not like the one by Sauk Trail Elementary.
Yeah, and we don't have specs for a raised or for that intersection, you mean, like the raised intersection? I don't think we don't have any specs for, a true raised intersection either, so that would be up for discussion in the future. Yeah.
Yep, so we may need to have that as an agenda item of specifics that we really look at beforehand instead of just calling it a raised crosswalk or a raised intersection, even if it actually isn't. But I would encourage everybody to go along the corridors. So I would actually say University Avenue. I've ridden all the major corridors thinking about RRFBs. And I think that University has the longest amount of gaps between lights with safe crossings for pedestrians than any other road. Other than Century, of course, but the city has said that they don't want to put one at Marina. But really looking at the gaps between light to light and how long it takes people to get from place to place if they have to cross at a light. Parmenter at Lisa Lane, that is a crosswalk, and there's no RRFB. That was one that I was concerned about because there are businesses, apartments on one side, businesses on the other side, and there's a crosswalk. So I would say Lisa Lane would be a good option because the nearest light would be Century, and then the nearest light south, I think, is University. Am I correct? On Parmenter?
Yeah.
So an RFB at Lisa Lane, because of all of the development and apartments there, I think that would be a very good RFB site. And that's one that I'd completely missed prior.
Brad?
Uh, now, first off, I'm all for RRFBs, but who are we expecting to be using an RRFB at Parmenter and Graber? Um, Anyone would be coming into the city. There's not much to go to heading out. Um, and with the weird trail crossing, I mean, it's already funky there. And the highest expectation would be people crossing to go to Graber Pond, but we shouldn't put an RFB to cross Parmenter and then have no sidewalk on Graber. Um, so until a lot of other changes are made over there, I don't know if we should prioritize that.
Okay.
Thea?
Um, yeah. First off, just again, Daphne, thanks so much for incorporating our suggestions. It was cool to see the map with all of our much of our feedback incorporated. I love the the LPIs, right? The delayed lights that you all suggested. I think the university ones look great. I defer to those who are more accustomed to the Century Avenue Road, but I really like those. Um, to respond to a couple of Kirsten's prompts, so yeah, down by Elm Lawn, it's tough, right? Because you have the RFB North. I just lost it on the map. Where did it go? Yeah, you have the RFB North, so it's South Avenue and Park, and then Kirsten was pointing out the one at Fortune and Gammon. If there is going to be a sidewalk, and we should expect kids and others to be crossing, so I do think focusing on that intersection is good. Um, raised crosswalk, I like, as Kirsten said, it should actually be raised. But more than that, people tend to just fly down the hill and around that curve. And so I wonder if we need more of a kind of comprehensive traffic speed study there. And because if we are expecting people to stop for the RFBs for the crosswalks, just adding crosswalks may not do it. It may be a candidate for speed bumps or medians or whatever it is to slow traffic. So that's I don't have any. I like what you all proposed, but I think I would also propose um, more attention to speeds down there. Um, University. Yeah, you guys know my personal intersection of frustration is Middleton and University. That's one where we all know the high school kids should be walking over to Graber, not to Graber, to Bristol, excuse me. But we also know that they don't. We've discussed how an RFB would not work there without other improvements like a median or something. But I'm going to continue to flag that as one that I think just warrants some real thinking, given the number of crashes I've personally witnessed involving cars and the number of kids that I see rush across the street there. So I want to flag that. I'll offer a couple more into the mix. Up by Cromery, I shared this with some of my neighbors who have middle schoolers. Again, they love the attention to that intersection. They thought, though, that the crossing guard and the raised sidewalk should actually be at Donna and the intersection or the parking lot. So Donna and Ravine, not Donna and Park.
Okay.
They ideally would like to see, yeah, a raised intersection and a crossing guard, potentially at both intersections, Donna and Ravine and Park and Donna. But they say that again, the Donna and Ravine, that like entrance to the middle school is just as a disaster nightmare, and they've witnessed crashes there. So I can't speak to that firsthand, but wanted to pass along their feedback. And then the other one that I think I briefly flagged, and I want to just reintroduce it to the conversation, is again by the high school, but this would be down on Park and Maywood. Recommendations from my neighbors for a four-way stop. They say that's just a very tricky intersection for high school students to navigate.
Kirsten.
Just going back to the, yes, Park and Maywood, I agree, four-way stop. I think that would be great. For the Graber Pond one on Parmenter, that would be more for Nones and Springs employees because they walk a lot on their lunch hour. And if we can win them over, maybe we can complete the trail along the paved multi-use trail along Parmenter. But I know that Nuns and Springs employees walk all the time at lunch, and that RFB would be primarily placed for them.
Hey, sorry, Kirsten, just to follow up on that. The at the I'm blanking on what it's called, the assisted living home on the other side of Parmenter there. Um, my wife has a number of patients who live there and they walk to Graber Pond all the time. So that RFB would be helping them, but again, they're walking on the street when they get on Graber. And I'm not going to stop talking about this until there's a sidewalk on that street.
No,
Thank
no,
you.
I am fully with you, and I believe that there needs to be a sidewalk as well. But yes, let's include that the senior living facility is also,
Cardinal. Yeah.
yep,
Yeah.
yes, exactly, a way to get over to Graber Pond, because until that path is completed and maintained, and until sidewalk is put on Graber, yeah, we need to have a safe crossing. That's a pretty big intersection. There are a lot of people with the T-wall apartments, with the senior living, with Nuns and Springs. We're talking about a ton of folks. So, yeah, we need to make that intersection safer for folks for sure.
Anything else jumping out at anybody right this instant? All right. Then let's move on to item number 4. Um, so I do not have next month's um, stuff added to the Complete Streets Guide. What I'm going to do, we will go back to the what I've been doing, where I prepare something in advance and then we talk about. We won't have anything to talk about specifically at next month's. Instead, we will have the preview. I'm going to make changes based on the feedback I've already gotten so far on all the things that we've seen up to this point, and so we can start talking about. But this month, I included a bunch of pictures, and I realized after I'd done that from last month that there were a bunch I'd missed. So Daphne helped get those into the packet. Uh, Pretty much just now. Um, so uh, I Yeah, we're going to talk about some pictures. Okay. So the first ones from, we'll start with the ones from last month, up in the combining intersections. I think it's in the combining, uh, not the intersections, the combining facilities, the cross sections. Yeah. So for now, I just started with some uh, theoretical cross sections. Um, we don't necessarily have places for every one of these things in the city, and that's fine. Kind of wanted to get kind of a vibe check, for lack of a better word, on how these things feel. Um, so, for example, the Grand Pedestrian Mall, that's partly to show how much pedestrian stuff can actually fit in a 60-foot right of way. It's a ton. But I also conceived of it, you can kind of make this out. Street view is a little limited, but you can kind of make this out. I conceived of it as both the outdoor dining and the street vendor areas, and then the wayfinding and, well, let's just focus on those first two. The outdoor dining and the street vendor areas are kind of the areas right in front of stores, right? The pedestrian equivalent of a parking lot. And then you have the wayfinding and the benches, which help delineate transition spaces from those ped landing areas into the local access streets. That's those sidewalks between those and the planters. And then in the middle, you kind of have, in effect, the long distance walking areas so that people, and I don't, I fully expect, because pedestrian speeds are generally the same no matter which thing you're doing, people will still stand in the middle of that and look around, and that's fine because there will be room to walk around them. Um, but it's just kind of an illustration of that concept of, it's a little less important for pedestrians to segregate by the exact uses, but it's an illustration that you can still do that and it helps to improve mobility for people. And just jump in if you have something, a comment before we move to the next one. Okay, scrolling down. So the example neighborhood access, um, we can't quite, air quotes, do this right away. There are various legal issues, but this is based on the concept of, there are various names for it. One of them is an edge lane road. So what you see in the middle there is a combined 20-foot right of way. Um, the center lane is for cars. If two, it's technically both ways. When cars meet in the middle, they have to give way to any cyclists who are on the edge areas, but then they can move to pass each other. You see these often, they're kind of all over the place in rural areas in the Netherlands and Denmark. It's basically also how Japanese neighborhoods have their street systems laid out. You only do this in areas with very low uh, traffic volumes. Elmwood would actually, I think this is one of the funny kind of contradictions of Middleton itself. Elmwood, for the most part, would be a great example of exactly where to put this because the traffic volume is less than 1,000 vehicles a day. That's like at peak a gap of a minute per car. Um, so some of our crossing difficulties with that low volume kind of tells you we've got some other issues. But um, and then it's also quite compact, but with room for big sidewalks, which that doesn't necessarily happen. Um, I like adding the sidewalks on top of that so we get a bit more separation. Brad.
How do cross intersections work with this? Like if I'm a car and I want to turn right or left onto this road and how is it controlled?
That pins in, you might see, in general, you would see, I think, a yield sign or even a stop, but in some areas, like if you are in a suburban neighborhood in the Netherlands, for example, they don't put stop signs. They just have an elevated, and it's, I mean, it's substantial elevation. They have a raised intersection with clear sight lines in every direction. So the combination of the raising and the clear sight lines and the very low volume makes, and just low overall speeds,
Yeah.
right? The speed limit is basically like 12 miles an hour. So you're going through that slow enough that you can get away with this, makes it sound bad. You're going slow enough that the lack of like definite control is not necessary because everybody can
I
negotiate.
yeah. I'm just if four cars came together at an
Yeah.
intersection, all going in different directions, no, I don't understand how, because the middle lane, if there's bikes, it's all of us. It's that's hard to
Well, I mean,
convey with
it's
street signs. So I just want to know
right.
how it works. Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, strictly speaking, it's a 20-foot right of way, right? So two cars
right.
can pass each other. Um, if
But
there's
they're
bikes
in the
coming that
middle. So if they're coming and then they're coming, so are they all turning into each? Yeah, that's where it gets weird.
right, you just kind of got to negotiate.
Okay,
Um,
no, that's fine. If
well,
that's what it is, then
yeah,
that's cool. Okay,
right. And I think, well, but I do think it's good to talk about this for various reasons. Like this is also one of those kind of significant differences between design philosophy between the US and a lot of other places. We've tried to transfer a lot of thinking that's very appropriate for highway design onto local streets too.
yeah.
So we need to have exact control over everything, forgetting that yes, that's good in those certain situations that the human brain can't accommodate. But one of the things that you're doing when you do that is you're telling people, don't worry, it's okay to turn off your brain. We've covered for you. And there are lots of times we don't actually want to do that.
Right.
So, yeah, it's just one of those, but they have the long-standing culture to make the actual implementation of these. It's anyway, Kirsten.
I think a great example for people to look at that is the closest to what we have is Stevens Street, which is a bike boulevard in West Madison, not far from Hoyt Park. So Ridge Street intersects it. Harvey, we have multiple intersections. It's not far from the football field, and so I think if people went out and looked at Stevens Street, it would be the closest to this that we have, with sidewalks on both sides, cars that can go through that are neighborhood cars, but all cars must yield to cyclists. And it is a major bike thoroughfare as well as pedestrian thoroughfare. And I have never found an issue with cars yielding to bike right of way.
Stevens Street allows parking, though, does it not?
It does. It does.
Okay.
You are correct. You are correct. So we'd have to add that to it. But it is very narrow. It's slow. And cars have to pull into essentially a parking spot if they're passing a cyclist or passing another vehicle. It's not exactly like this, but I think it's probably the closest that
Right.
we have.
Mm.
Yeah, and I think the cross section I drew is kind of assuming, right, it's assuming driveways and off-street uh parking. There are all sorts of adaptations we could do parking wise. And then anything else about that one?
I've got comments on the oops, but we'll wait till
Okay.
you get.
Yeah, let's uh hang on. I do want to take a note quick on what Brad. So the oops all mobility. Um, this is an illustration of what a corridor could look like if it has accommodation for each of the major traffic types. When I say all mobility, I mean this is a connector between two areas of the city. There are no driveways. There are nobody's driveways. That's that's a big thing for me. Nobody's driveways along this corridor. We are not trying to put a highway in front of people's houses because that works for nobody. So as a result, and it is kind of on the one hand, it's kind of wide. It's an 80-foot right of way. On the other hand, that is narrower than the proposed right of way for North Parmenter, and yet it can fit all this stuff. Um, so I think it's helpful as an illustration of, in particular, while the throughput numbers for the non for both the bike and pedestrian numbers are actually over optimistically high. Um, the real numbers for those are about 70% of those numbers, and those 70% are still way higher than like throughput wise than what you get with cars. So even thinking in that terms, it really also illustrates just how it's partly there to illustrate how space inefficient cars are and what a, a more efficient design uh, could look like. So Kirsten.
Regarding this, I think it most mimics Mineral Point Road, the new Mineral Point Road design, I guess. And I've talked to a lot of people in Minneapolis where they've been implementing the two-way bike tracks on one side of the road, either north or south or east or west, as well as talking to people who take the Mineral Point Road one. And for ped bike safety, I've heard nothing but complaints about the safety of two track ways being on one side of the road versus following the movement of vehicular traffic. Um, it's something that I guess I didn't realize would be such an issue, but now that we have it here in the city on Mineral Point, it was a great test. Minneapolis has several segments that have been using it, and every person that I have spoken to that uses bicycles or walking as a form of transportation has said how dangerous it is. So I think that we really, as a city, need to eliminate the idea of using two track bikeways on one side of the road.
Can I ask can I ask specifically what their complaint is?
So their
Danger
complaint,
wise.
yep, that as people are pulling out of driveways, whether it be houses or businesses, they're not looking in both directions for oncoming traffic from pedestrian and bicycles. They're only looking in one direction for oncoming traffic from vehicles before pulling out into the road. And so the risk of teen
Okay.
cycle pedestrian goes way up. And I don't use Mineral Point Road to commute very often. And of course, I don't live in
Right.
Minneapolis longer.
Yeah.
So I was just gathering feedback from them regarding how
Yeah.
feel moving through these areas now that these changes have been made. And I've gotten
Right.
nothing but negative feedback for
So
feeling safety.
yeah, and that makes sense. So I do want to reiterate the thing I said, no driveways allowed here.
Yep.
So yes, that's a great that's great reinforcement, I think of and it is an important reminder that every driveway is an intersection and we have to treat it as an actual intersection and design it accordingly. I am kind of curious because you can't it's I guess I'm kind of curious if we
I mean, it's very idealistic to say that we are going to put, that would be like
oh
Century.
yeah, no.
We're going to put
Honestly,
a multi-use path on both sides of the road. But if you look at the suburbs of the Twin Cities, they do that.
oh
Um,
yeah. Yeah, that's fine. I like
yep,
that.
that we want to try to keep, um, especially cyclists because they're moving at a faster pace, moving in the direction of vehicular traffic. Not against. Because then when people are pulling out of driveways and parking lots, they are looking in the direction that vehicular traffic is moving and they will see the
Right.
cycle coming up or a pedestrian coming up. Unless we're going to put in all these safety factors of speed humps and signage, which we can do, hoping that people, see it.
Oh, I'm not hopeful that people will see it.
Right.
Um, I am also trying to figure out what we do about sidewalks in that instance, though, because it would be functionally impossible to keep pedestrians from walking against the flow of
Yep.
traffic.
But they are moving at a much
So,
slower pace than cyclists, and they
yeah,
are then
that's
visible.
true.
See,
Oh, yeah,
yeah,
right. Okay, so specifically when we're okay, I okay, thanks for talking that through with me.
and
That
that's why I was saying a
right.
multi-use path versus a sidewalk. When we're talking about multi-use paths, we need to have them on both sides so that people are moving in the direction, preferably of vehicular traffic.
And okay.
Just feedback on what I have gotten from
No,
for.
that makes a lot of sense. I do think uh I'm honestly not trying to be defensive here, but
Oh no,
it just it no, it's a good reminder like it's one of those it's a good reminder that I am very deep in this and I have a very specific thing in mind and this is actually not that common a segment in the city. So it's
no.
neat that I have the example there, but
I mean, Mineral
it's
Point, our first cities one, right? For Madison.
right.
And I walked it 2 weeks ago purposely to watch how cars behave moving out of parking lots and watch where they look. And I walked the whole length of it 2 weeks ago, and it was pretty eye-opening. And it gave me reflection of how my friends who commute on Mineral Point Road, and they say, they hate it. They miss the bike lanes on the road because at least the bike lanes made them feel as if they were a part of traffic and not separated from traffic. So I guess if
Yeah.
we have the multi-use path, we need to keep bike lanes as well.
Yeah. I think that's another I think I think that's also a good reminder. I think that's also a good reminder that we find ourselves, we have this ideal, and we have our reality, and we find ourselves in between those things. Like I will use the bike path along Mineral Point. I have. And probably because I'm a slower cyclist and I don't go fast at all, um, that that speed differential thing has honestly never occurred to me when I have been biking on it because I slow down so much that I'm almost a pedestrian even though I'm on a bike.
Yeah.
And I would never move into that bike lane because I'm not confident enough. We find ourselves in that limbo where the people who the people who have a certain amount of confidence are actually safer being confident on that street than they are on using
Yeah.
the facility for the less confident.
And on University, I actually prefer when ice and snow are not an issue. I take the bike lane versus the bike path on
Hmm.
University into Madison from Middleton because I feel more visible at intersections. And I don't have to deal with people pulling out of the Pancake House and all of those businesses and teeing me. So I actually choose to take the road because I feel it's safer. So just looking at the all mobility stuff, I think that keeping people at least moving at a faster speed in direction of vehicular traffic is important.
All right. Um, and then scrolling down. So the next section is uh, a few pictures of intersections. Um, some some of which I want to make sure we have um I want to make sure we have intersection diagrams. And so the first one is a turbo roundabout. I'm not sure exactly where that is. It's somewhere in the Netherlands. It's a turbo roundabout. You'll notice it has no bike paths, no pedestrian. This is out in the middle of nowhere. It's not supposed to have those things. We don't want people crossing here. Um, we probably don't need any of these in the city, but we still want to talk about them. Um, you'll notice, and Kirsten, I have heard feed. I've read a bunch of feedback from motorcyclists in particular that don't like this feature of Dutch turbo roundabouts, the raised lane separator uh, in the roundabout itself, um, which is great for alerting cars, but an issue for motorcyclists. Um, but what you'll see is the enforced lane separation as you enter. Um, the kind of uh, the they're neat. Um, I'll say that. I'll keep it at that. They're neat. They're a better solution than the fully multi-lane roundabouts that we use in the United States. The other thing is I want to. This will also, if you scroll down, Daphne. Um, so uh, this is an American single lane roundabout, but it's actually built what I consider uh, better than what we see a lot in the immediate area. Uh, there's no a lot of the roundabouts here, you'll see they have a sharp entry, but then they want you to get out as fast as possible, and that kind of negates about half of the safety benefits of roundabouts. So that's why both the entry and the exit here are square on to the circle. So you enter slowly and exit slowly. And you'll also see that the pedestrian crossing areas are far back, which means that the driver is only looking at the pedestrian and not trying to negotiate both the pedestrian and other cars at the same time. Because that second thing doesn't work very well. And then so those two are pretty common. Scrolling down a little more, you'll see an urban interpretation. In the United States, we call this a reduced conflict U-turn intersection. It's more fun to say Voorrangsplein in Dutch, but um, so what these are used for when there is a main street that has the overwhelming majority of the traffic and a cross street that has only occasional traffic. The recommendation is no more than about 20% of the cross volume. Um, this again, it's off that same principle I was mentioning, Brad, where by slowing people down and making them negotiate, it's actually much safer than giving them the impression that they can just tear off safely. So in this case, what you'll see is that in order to make a left turn from the dominant street onto the side street, you need to pull into that center area and you will yield and then you will go across. You'll actually join the flow and then make a right turn first. Um, and then if you are on the side street, you do basically the same thing. You cross, you go into that U-turn area, and then you go around. Um, so the other thing about these is I would love to experiment with them. I think they're potentially a good example of where we could do a tactical urbanism project related to this. So conveniently, I think a street that has traffic flow that would be really amenable to this is Parmenter and Donna, the intersection. And so this is a Google Maps picture showing a comparison of the Parmenter and Donna intersection and one of these reduced conflict U-turn intersections in a city in the Netherlands. And what you'll notice from the measurements is that this is the width, and the next page is the length. Initially, as I was thinking about it, I was thinking we would need to block off the middle and make people use the existing. And then I actually measured it and realized we could just stick a functioning reduced conflict U-turn intersection right in the middle of Parmenter and Donna because it's so huge relative to the traffic volume it actually gets. So it's not a great drawing, but the last page is my doodle of how that could be implemented. Um, and it is a doodle. Um, this it, I don't think the the tactical urbanism probably wouldn't follow these exact lines. We would probably have a little bigger space than we would uh, eventually design for, just so we'd have some flexibility. Um, the point there is to illustrate what's possible. There are some caveats. Um, One of the nice things from my perspective about an R cut is you can reduce traffic down to one lane in each direction, which Parmenter doesn't carry enough daily traffic to need more than one lane in each direction. Except slightly down the street to the south, we have driveways. sticking in my eternal bugaboo, driveways, sticking in onto this highway. So the actual the even just the tactical urbanism project, not to mention the final thing, would still need to account for those. We would there's a whole lot of uh figuring out what kinds of compromises we can make. But I still wanted to illustrate that we are already, in my opinion, wasting space for our traffic design, and we could use it much more effectively given how much of it we have available. So I wanted to make sure that some picture conveying that is in the overall plan. So that was kind of Kirsten.
Yeah, I love that you use Parmenter because Parmenter is kind of a thorn in my side with the other roundabout just south of there. And I was curious how you're going to bring this in because of the Cayuga Path and the other roundabout. And I hate diverting cyclists off the road onto path, then back into traffic, then off to path and into traffic because I think it's unsafe. It's not predictable. I love the just cyclists may take full lane. But here I'd be real curious.
What is she curious about?
Watch the
No.
teenager. The traffic where they cut across and how they move. To think about that. And then also this intersection I think would get super backed up because of all the parents driving their kids to Cromery. If you look at it at 7 a.m. or at pickup time, the traffic will be backed up all the way down Parmenter at that intersection. So we'd be looking at
Because,
a different thing to slay, a dragon to slay, and that is
right.
why are we all driving our kids to school versus them walking and taking bus and biking? But that's a great intersection to look at for studies of movement.
Um, I am never out there early in the morning. Is it, do we know, is it primarily, I guess the question I'm asking, are parents coming from both directions on Parmenter?
Yes. Both directions on Donna, both directions on Parmenter. It is a complete roadblock at 7 a.m. and at 3:30 p.m. For anybody that tries to get through there as a cyclist, I choose to go around and zigzag because I cannot get through there as a cyclist at those times. That's how
Right.
bad. But that might be a completely another discussion, an agenda item talking about idling cars and drop off and pick up from school.
Yeah.
Let's make that another agenda item.
Oh, absolutely. I, I think we could probably have a combination planning and brief session over the completely reasonable neighborhood walking to schools that then you can no longer walk to because parents can no longer live within walking distance of those schools.
Yeah.
There are
And
so many aspects.
and I would love this intersection and this area around Cromery to be a whole
Mhm.
meeting talking about what we can do manage traffic and make it safer for pedestrians and cyclists and drivers of vehicles.
I think this also kind of suggests that in addition to a complete streets guide, which tells us how to build types of streets, we probably also at some point need a citywide traffic plan where we talk about the traffic flows that we have and the issues those create and what we could potentially do to uh, adjust those because there there are all sorts of great general designs like the reduced conflict U-turn intersection that work great if you know what your overall traffic flow is, and if you don't have, say, what should be a straightforward main street cross street, except for two points in the day where it suddenly gains a strong turning movement characteristic.
Let's put that on the work plan, Tad.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay, should we move to the work plan then?
Yes, let's move to the work plan.
Okay. So most of this is just, I mean, it's basically the same as the work plan from 2025. I just updated some of the dates for 2026. Um, and then, yeah, I think that's basically all I did for now. So we did mention a couple things to be adding to the work plan. I'm happy to make these updates and then we can look them over at the next meeting as well.
Kirsten.
We've moved through many of these. So for the 2026 work plan, outside of ongoing things like Week Without Driving and Bike Week in June, I want to add that all initiatives posed by city staff from the mayor on down that deal with ped bike transit safety need to go through our committee. So the current mayor, she mentioned in many posts recently, school safety corridors. That was never put through our committee. And then also the zebra crosswalk crossing, that was never put through our committee prior to it being implemented. So I think that anything ped bike transit proposed by city staff need to go through our committee.
Yeah, I mean, even if we look at it and go sweet and just kind of rubber stamp it, it would be nice to know. I at the very least, it'd be nice to know that we have other people working alongside us instead of just kind of flailing in the dark. So yeah. Thea.
Yeah, I'll informally second that proposal. The mayor's also been mentioning the traffic like speed studies, and I don't think we've had a chance to discuss that in our group. That was in her budget. There's a couple things that I've been interested in working on that you all can tell me if they rise to the level of being added to the work plan. But so it's funny, Kirsten, you mentioned this school safety corridor. That's something that I'd love to think about how we can advance in this group. I called it like a school safety audit, but really looking at some of these conflict intersections, looking at crash reports, looking at the traffic studies if they exist, maybe collecting some survey data just to really kind of drill down on one of these vulnerable populations. And then the other idea that I'm curious if you all have discussed in the past or something we'd want to advance would be experimenting with street closures on weekends. Elmwood, right, might be a good candidate for that, to facilitate like recreation, play, commuting, walking, etc. for limited periods, and I'm sure some other cities have had success with that.
Oh yeah, a great example that a lot of cities all over the world do is Sunday evenings limit or close off their downtown streets and make them pedestrian only, and those are hugely popular.
Yeah.
Yeah, Kirsten.
Yeah, Milwaukee has cyclovia, it's called. And in Milwaukee, I think it's Walker's Point where cyclovia has mostly been held, but it would be great during bike week and a week without driving. A great introduction to closing off certain streets and having a block party type celebration for people to feel safe.
I will note that the planning department is wholly on board on closing streets. We have we have closed, that area around Hubbard and, Stonehurst Green a couple times, and um that even getting us to that point was quite a battle, at least with businesses downtown. They want their parking right outside their business and all of that. That's what we've heard, at least every time we try and close it. And we have discussed closing Hubbard Avenue, like around the between the library and City Hall, and Hubbard and the senior center, or Hubbard Avenue Diner in the in the senior center. So that whole area has been discussed, like what they do for muster days, and doing that, on a weekly or even quarterly basis. And so we have been discussing that, and it's just been a lot of an uphill battle. So if having a committee, back us behind that, I think could also really help. Yeah.
I think there'd be a lot
Yeah.
of enthusiasm from residents, and so we can help establish that enthusiasm if helpful.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Daphne, do look up cyclovia in Milwaukee since it's
Hmm.
their Wisconsin city. And that draws so thousands and thousands of people, bands and sidewalk painting, and it's essentially a neighborhood festival.
Real quick, for the items that we have on there, uh, our our final two items on the list as it stands, the unsafe crossings. Are we feeling we have done that one, or we want to revisit it still? Kirsten wants to revisit it still.
Especially
Okay.
Costco, the area around Costco. That is an area
Yeah.
that I go through weekly to volunteer at trails, and I feel like the Goodwill signs have definitely made a difference. And Daphne, I messaged you right away when the signs went up. I feel like I see people back up. People blow through the Costco parking lot, eating, texting. They don't care. Every time I go past Costco, I have a near miss. And that is me looking with my head on a swivel, right? Um, it's extremely dangerous, and we have to look at that area, both out of the parking lot and the intersection just south of Costco. Those two are terribly, terribly dangerous for any pedestrian and any cyclist. Um, we've got to either have speed humps post or put in the Costco parking lot before they hit that, so they have to go actually up and over something, or the green paint. I mean, there are multiple things that we can do.
Yeah.
That's be a dangerous intersection no matter what, but we have to pull out all of our guns for that one.
Yeah. Okay. And then and then coordinating with the police department. How are you feeling on that, Kirsten?
I can try again, that last, so now with the new chief, I did go to the chief chat and, Alder Haniro also was there and I raised a lot of concerns. The main thing that the chief talked about was that we need to be working on infrastructure, and not
Mhm.
just police enforcement. They are extremely understaffed. They need two more officers, um, to actually do their job. So
Mhm.
he was very, very supportive of what we're concerned about. But he said, with the staff shortage and without us working on more infrastructure, um, he can only do so much.
Yeah,
So,
that's
but
absolutely
he's
fair.
very, very open to working with us. And I had suggested that we do PSA videos, public safety announcement videos, um,
Mhm.
with crosswalks and how people should navigate them and watch for pedestrians and cyclists, and make them kind of funny and put them on the city website and also out on social media. And he thought that that was a very good idea.
Okay. So
So,
we'll come back on that one too. Okay.
yep. And I'm
Sounds
continuing
good.
conversation with them. Yes.
Awesome. Okay. So then are we happy with the items we have on the work plan at the moment? Plus I'm already kind of forgetting. I'm so tired. Did we add some
So
earlier in this?
we can add what Thea suggested, the school safety audit. And then maybe we
Yes.
can have
Okay.
that in tangent with high school outreach. And then also the street closures.
Yep.
Yes. Okay.
And then also adding that any initiative
Yes.
that the city provides goes through our committee first if it's ped bike
Mhm.
transit related.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So that's the last item on our agenda. Do we have anything else staff update wise? I don't think so.
No staff updates. For future agenda items, I noted the maintenance, the policy issue for maintenance along that Parmenter shared use path. So that's one of the main things. I believe we'll be having that joint Public Works Ped Bike Transit meeting either I think it'll probably be in March. So I'll let you know if it is. It might be in February. I have to check with um, Ben with the Public Works Department to see what they have on their agenda, but it'll probably be March, possibly February.
All right. Well, we're at the end of our agenda, so we are adjourned. Thank you, everybody. Have a good rest of your evening.
Have a good
Night,
one.
everybody.
Thanks, everyone. Good night.